Well, I wanted to make an album that at this point of my life, I'm 45, I've just been honored with being an honorary consul with Amnesty International, which means I'm a bona fide human rights defender, but also, of course, a composer, a performer, and an improviser. And I think that as you grow older, you really want what you say, the message of what you do, to be not only close to your heart, but to hopefully create change and to be important. So this recording is really a statement about all those things that I'm involved with now, and how much each aspect matters to me. Using my voice as an artist to speak about issues that are not spoken about enough, and using my voice as a human rights defender to also bring to light on my public platform situations that should not be acceptable and should not be happening. So it's a recording that is very much about music, about Rachmaninoff, about my piece Patria and improvisations, about the creative three sides of what I do, the composer, performer, and improviser, but also more. It's about Venezuela, and it's about the situation that it's been in the last 16 years.
Well, tell us about that situation, because I think a lot of Americans, when they think of the artist in exile, they think of people of the past or of the Cold War or World War II. And
yes,
you really are an artist in exile. And talk a little bit about your homeland and what's going on there right now.
Well, you're right that a lot of people don't know what is happening because you see very little in the news. The last 16 years has been a total transformation for Venezuela in the worst possible way. There's been an increase in crime of almost 900% in homicide. One of the pieces in this recording is my composition Patria, and I wrote it. I made that decision to actually make a very public statement because I wanted to honor the 19,336 victims of murder that year. And for your listeners to put that in perspective, that number symbolizes, it's the equivalent to what it would be here in the USA to have 32 times the homicide rate that you have now.
Wow. It's
incredible. It's really incredible. It's a humanitarian crisis. It's a catastrophe. Venezuela is a country where 95% of crimes go uninvestigated and unpunished. Imagine that happening in the US, where there is absolutely no judicial system, where there is no law, where crimes go unpunished like that. I mean, there would be a complete chaos and leaders would quit. There would be riots. I mean, this country would never be able to stand for something like that. And yet Venezuela, which is not so far away, it's only an hour and 30 minutes from Miami, is living that situation. I haven't returned to Venezuela in 5 years because it would be dangerous for me to do so, but also because I wanted my absence to be a very public protest of someone who refuses to return home as a hostage, meaning I would have to have bodyguards, I would have to have a bulletproof car, I would have to protect myself from what every citizen in Venezuela is exposed to every single day. And I don't want to have that privilege. I don't want to be the one to be protected in the way that very few people would be able to. And it's a statement of mine of saying I refuse to go back to my country under those conditions. So Venezuela, the only way I can sum it up is it sounds like Patria, like my piece. It feels like Patria. It's a society that is suffocated, that is under an oppressive government. And as an artist, what I try to do is to speak of all of these issues that I think should be spoken about. There should be a huge conversation about what is happening in the world and how we as artists can use our voice to talk about it.
Well, you spoke with the BBC about how music can inspire empathy and how it can evoke change. And can you talk a little bit about your hopes for this piece, Ex Patria?
Yes. Well, as I've said, honestly, it's a document. Ex Patria is a document of this time in history of Venezuela, these 16 years. It's a piece where you hear the obliteration of a society. You hear the theft from one instrument to another of that innocence portrayed in a melody. It's a piece that really is meant to crush the listener and to really make the listener feel, go through that experience of what it feels like to be in Venezuela. But my hope is that one day, because it is a document, it will be archived, it will be put away, because it represents a time of my country's history that I hope will end, and that page will be turned and change will come. But we can only hope for change when there is a true democracy in place.
Let's talk about that music a little bit. This is your first, your opus number 1
Yes.
as a composer, and it's very intense.
Yes.
And I hear parallels in your harmonic progressions with Rachmaninoff and some of the great, kind of romantic expatriate composers out there. And I assume that was something that you meant to evoke.
Well, I think it's all part of my musical makeup. I've lived all my life with these composers, and I do very much admire those that stood up to oppression and that used their music as a vehicle to defend their people or to tell stories. And I mean, the piece is beautiful, but it's also very conflicted because it depicts a situation that is exactly like that. There's still great beauty in Venezuela and its people, but these people are being, unfortunately, annihilated in many different ways. And it's really a piece that I wanted to be something that people would remember, maybe in a slightly uncomfortable experience, but at the same time a very moving one. So it's an experience in itself.
Have you had any kind of reaction from perhaps people from Venezuela who have heard this music?
Well, I have to say that people who are great classical music fans, and even those who don't know that much about classical music, have all come to me and said, I completely understood the metaphor, what you were trying to tell us. Thank you for opening us up to this situation. I want to know more. I can't turn away from it. And that is exactly what I wanted to achieve with Ex Patria. I wanted people to just not be able to turn away from it and say, I want to know more. There's something here that I need to find out. And that is what the piece does. Reactions to my using my music to telling these stories. Well, I've had several concerts canceled, unfortunately, but not that many, though. I have to say the support has been overwhelming. But anytime you're going against tyranny, you're going to have a reaction from that part, of course, that is going to be unpleasant. But that's part of the price, and I knew that before I started this.
It's worth pointing out, I think, that you have a lot of resources on your website, including a lot of videos that people can go watch if they really want to immerse themselves in what's going on.
Yes.
And you have a blog that you launched at the same time that you released this album.
Yes.
The Venezuela Room. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Well, I mean, I wanted the Venezuela Room to be a meeting point for people who wanted to ask questions, but also for people who have lived through these situations to be able to answer them directly as well. So a point of a conversation, let's say, was open to discuss and to really educate people. And well, I wish that at this point of my life I was just giving concerts and composing, but because what I'm doing as a human rights honorary consul, for Amnesty International, is so much more difficult than just being the performer. But the situation is such that it is what it is, and I'm having to deal with reality and in trying to help shift into a different reality, trying to, like I said, shed light on situations that are very much still in the dark. So my webpage has a lot of information about YouTube videos I've done, national anthems of Venezuela that I've done as protest pieces as well, and just trying to illustrate who I am at this point of my life as an artist, but also as a Venezuelan who is really suffering very much because of the situation there.
I also want to ask you about the Rachmaninoff recording, because obviously you're very much into performing ex Patria.
Yeah.
I mean, it's your music, it has something to say, but you bring the same kind of fire and intensity to the Rachmaninoff concerto, and I wonder why you chose that to go with your piece.
Well, thank you. I mean, it's a concerto that I always wanted to record. I've been playing since I was 12, 13, 14 years old, and it's been a companion throughout my life. It's also a concerto that audiences love, and inevitably they always ask you, have you recorded it? Will you record it? Of course, it's been recorded by everybody, but I hoped that I would bring my own personal understanding of it to this, to the history of this recording and to the public today. It's a piece that for me has great significance, not only because I love him as a composer, as a pianist, but also because it came out of a time that was so difficult for him, that was so full of pain and questions and searching. And I find that the result of those years of uncreativity and of struggle is so beautiful. It's such a heartfelt piece with so much in it, with such an authentic and sincere pledge. To leave something like that behind is such a beautiful, it's a beautiful gift, let's say, to the world. So I really wanted this piece to be included in the recording.
Yeah, that's wonderful, and I think that they complement each other very nicely.
Thank you.
And you also have the 3 little improvisations. Of course, anybody who knows you knows that you are famous for your improvisations.
Thank you.
And now, you have to forgive my musical ignorance, but I did hear a little of the piano concerto, the Rachmaninoff, in the first improvisation at the end.
Well, of course, we are a sum of the influences and things that we love and what we live through. Rachmaninoff is always very present in a lot of my improvisations. The first improvisation is very Baroque. It's kind of like a little homage to Bach. The second one is the one where you can really hear Rachmaninoff's soul in there. I never quote directly any composers, but you can hear it colored by his style and his language. And then the last one is almost like a little Venezuelan. It's almost like a sad lullaby, which is meant to say goodbye to an album that is a very intense statement and that is full of a lot of energy, a lot of fire. And this little improvisation is just saying goodnight, basically.
Now, you've been doing this since you were a toddler, really. I find that amazing that you were obviously a prodigy at the piano. What I do love, and you mentioned videos on your website, is looking at that video of you at 9 years old playing Haydn, and you're improvising even then. That's remarkable.
Oh, yeah. I think the improvisation was longer than the concerto, actually. I've improvised all my life, and I don't remember a time, especially when I was little, where I would not come to the piano and I would always just improvise. The first thing I would do. I do that even now. It's just my greeting of the instrument, and it's really my world. And my improvisations, interestingly, even then, were mostly in minor keys when I was a kid. They were very, very complex. Some of them were very, very dark. I was improvising when I was 7 or 8 years old, very much in the style of Bartók and Ginastera, and I had never listened to these composers. So it's very much a mystery where it comes from, how it happens, but it's what I love to do the most.
Congratulations on this. I'm hoping that someday you'll be able to perform Ex Patria at home.
Yes, that is the hope. I hope so, and I don't know when that will happen or if it will happen. It would take a very brave orchestra to do that with me.
Well, Gabriela Montero's latest recording pairs her own composition, Ex Patria, with the second piano concerto of Sergei Rachmaninoff. And Gabriela, I want to thank you so much for joining us here today on FM 91.
Thank you, Brad, very much for your time. Thank you.